The sun was just beginning to set over the quiet suburban streets of Orlando, Florida, casting a golden glow over the neatly trimmed lawns and picture-perfect homes. From the outside, the McAllister family had everything: a big house, a successful business, and the kind of life that made neighbors envious. But behind closed doors, things were far from perfect. Emma McAllister, a 34-year-old stay-at-home mom, had grown tired of her routine. She had once loved her husband, Mark, but now she felt trapped. He was controlling, always questioning her spending, and lately he had been talking about cutting off her credit cards. She couldn't let that happen. She had a plan. For months, she had been seeing someone new, David Carter, a smooth-talking fraudster she had met online. He made her feel alive again, promising her a future filled with excitement and luxury. But there was one problem: money. David had big dreams, but he needed cash to make them real. Emma was desperate to prove her loyalty to him, and she was willing to do anything to keep him, even if it meant getting rid of Mark. On the night of May 15th, Emma put her plan into motion. She made Mark's favorite dinner, steak and mashed potatoes. She poured him a glass of wine, lacing it with a heavy dose of sleeping pills. As he ate, she watched him closely, her hands trembling slightly. 30 minutes later, Mark started to feel drowsy. He rubbed his temples, his words slurring. "Emma, something's wrong." She smiled sweetly. "You've been working too hard, honey. Just relax." As soon as he slumped over in his chair, she sprang into action. She grabbed a kitchen knife, her heart pounding. She hesitated for only a moment before plunging the blade into his chest. The sound of his gasping breath filled the room, but within seconds it was over. Mark McAllister was dead. Emma wasted no time. She wrapped his body in plastic and dragged him to the garage. She had already rented a storage unit under a fake name. With David's help, she loaded the body into the trunk and drove into the night. But Emma's need for money didn't stop there. She had an 8-year-old daughter, Lily. She loved her, but love wasn't enough, not when David was waiting for her in Miami with promises of paradise. A week before Mark's murder, Emma had found a buyer. A woman named Carla, who worked for a child trafficking ring, had offered her $1,000 for Lily. It wasn't much, but it was enough to book a one-way flight to the Bahamas with David. The night after Mark's body was disposed of, Emma packed Lily's favorite stuffed bunny into a small bag and told her they were going on an adventure. But instead of taking her somewhere safe, she drove to a rundown motel on the outskirts of town where Carla was waiting. Lily, confused and scared, clung to her mother. "Mommy, where are we going?" Emma knelt down, forcing a smile. "It's okay, baby. Just be good, and everything will be fine." Then, without another word, she handed Lily over. Carla stuffed a wad of cash into Emma's hands, and just like that, her daughter was gone. Emma didn't look back. She had a plane to catch. For a few days, everything seemed perfect. Emma and David lounged on the white sandy beaches of the Bahamas, sipping cocktails and laughing without a care in the world. But back in Florida, the McAllister house was eerily quiet. Neighbors began to notice that Mark hadn't been around. Lily's school reported her absence, and when Mark's sister Susan couldn't get a hold of him, she went to the police. Detective Ryan Carter, a veteran investigator with the Orlando PD, was assigned to the case. He had a gut feeling that something was off. And when he started digging into Emma McAllister's recent activities, he knew this wasn't just a missing persons case. It was something far worse. Detective Ryan Carter stood outside the McAllister home, studying the perfectly maintained lawn and the dark windows. Something about the silence of the place unsettled him. Mark McAllister hadn't been seen in over a week, and his wife, Emma, was nowhere to be found. The missing persons report had been filed by Mark's sister, Susan, who claimed her brother would never leave town without telling someone, especially not without his daughter, Lily. Ryan knocked on the door, but there was no answer. He walked around to the backyard, peering through the glass sliding doors. The house was spotless, but something felt off. He made a note to request a warrant if necessary. As he turned back toward the street, Susan pulled up in her car, stepping out with a look of desperation. "I knew something was wrong," she said, crossing her arms tightly. "Mark never ignored my calls. And Lily, she hasn't been at school." Ryan nodded. "When was the last time you spoke to him?" "About 10 days ago. He sounded normal, just talking about work and Lily's soccer game." Then, nothing. I texted Emma too, but she never responded. Did Mark ever mention any problems at home? Susan hesitated, then sighed. He loved Emma, but lately he seemed worried about their finances. Said she was spending too much. And there were rumors. What kind of rumors? That she was seeing someone else. A younger guy. I told Mark to be careful. She exhaled sharply. I never thought. Ryan took notes, his mind piecing together the beginning of what now seemed like more than just a disappearance. Back at the station, Ryan ran a check on Emma's financial records. What he found made his stomach tighten. A large transaction had been made, an international purchase. Emma had booked a flight to the Bahamas just days before Mark was last seen. But what caught his attention even more was the deposit in her bank account. $1,000 in cash, deposited at an ATM the night before her flight. He frowned. $1,000? That wasn't enough to escape with. Unless. He clicked over to missing persons reports. Then he saw it. A local school had reported an absent student, Lily McAllister. A child welfare case had been opened, but no one had been able to reach Emma. Ryan's heart sank. He had seen this before. Kids vanishing, sometimes sold by desperate parents. He needed more. Something concrete. Mark's car hadn't been found, but Ryan traced recent activity linked to his name. That's when he found it. An active rental for a storage unit on the outskirts of town. The payment had been made under a fake name, but the ID matched Emma's driver's license. Ryan wasted no time. Within an hour, he arrived at the storage facility with a warrant in hand. The unit manager, a balding man in a faded polo shirt, led him to the right space. The lock was cut, and the metal door rolled up. The stench hit him first, an unmistakable, sickening smell of decay. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was the decomposing body of Mark McAllister. Ryan swallowed hard, his pulse steady despite the horror before him. Emma McAllister hadn't just run away. She had murdered her husband, and worse, she had sold her own daughter to do it. Detective Ryan Carter stood outside the storage unit, the flashing lights of police cruisers illuminating the grim scene. Crime scene investigators moved in methodically, taking photos and gathering evidence. The stench of death was thick in the air, but Ryan had learned long ago to push past it. Mark McAllister's body was wrapped in plastic, but blood had seeped through, staining the floor. He had been stabbed multiple times, the wounds deep and deliberate. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was planned. Ryan turned to Officer Megan Torres, his partner for the case. She didn't do this alone. Emma doesn't seem like the type to get her hands dirty. Torres nodded. Yeah, but she knew what she was doing. Storage unit under a fake name, cash transactions. She was trying to cover her tracks. Ryan exhaled. And we still don't know where Lily is. Back at the precinct, Ryan ordered a full workup on Emma's movements. The forensics team confirmed that the plastic wrap around Mark's body had been purchased from a home improvement store just days before his murder. Surveillance footage showed Emma and an unidentified man at the checkout. They had their accomplice. Ryan stared at the screen, pausing the video on the man's face. Tall, mid-30s, dark hair. Not a match for any of Mark's known associates, but something about him looked familiar. Run facial recognition, he ordered. Within minutes, the system returned a match. David Carter, a known fraudster with a long list of scams across Florida and Georgia. Credit card fraud, identity theft, wire fraud, the works. And now he was tied to murder. Torres whistled low. Looks like our guy. Ryan clenched his jaw. And Emma ran straight to him. As Ryan dug deeper, another disturbing transaction appeared. Emma's $1,000 cash deposit. Torres frowned. That's not enough to disappear. What was she doing? Ryan's stomach turned. He already knew. He just needed proof. He traced the deposit back to an ATM near a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. Security footage showed Emma meeting with a woman. Short, blonde, wearing sunglasses even at night. Carla Diaz. Ryan recognized the name instantly. She was linked to child trafficking rings across the southeast. His hands tightened into fists. Emma hadn't just sold her daughter. She had sold her to Carla Diaz. Get me an address on Diaz, Ryan snapped. Torres was already dialing. Every minute counted. If Carla had Lily, the little girl could be anywhere by now. These rings move fast, selling children like merchandise, shipping them off to buyers in different states, or worse, different countries. An hour later, Ryan and his team raided an old house on the edge of town, one of Diaz's known properties. The place was nearly empty, just a mattress on the floor, a half-eaten sandwich on the table. And in the corner, wide-eyed and shaking, was Lily McAllister. Ryan immediately rushed to her, kneeling down. "Lily, my name is Ryan. You're safe now." The little girl clutched her stuffed bunny, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Where's my mommy?" Ryan swallowed hard. "She's not coming," because as far as he was concerned, Emma McAllister had already sealed her fate, and he was going to make sure she paid for what she had done. Lily McAllister sat in the back of the squad car, wrapped in a blanket, clutching her stuffed bunny like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Detective Ryan Carter stole a glance at her in the rearview mirror. She hadn't said much since they found her. Trauma did that to kids. "We're taking you somewhere safe, sweetheart," he said gently. She didn't answer, just stared out the window, lost in her own world. Ryan turned his attention back to the road. Emma McAllister had done the unthinkable. Not only had she murdered her husband, but she had sold her own daughter. And now she was sunbathing in the Bahamas with her scam artist boyfriend. But she wouldn't be free for long. Back at the precinct, Ryan and Officer Megan Torres worked through the night. They had a solid case now. Murder, conspiracy, child trafficking. But they needed Emma in custody now before she disappeared for good. Torres hung up the phone, her face grim. Customs confirmed it. Emma and David landed in Nassau 3 days ago. No return flights booked. Ryan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "They think they got away with it." "Think again," Torres said, holding up a document. "We flagged her passport. The Bahamian authorities are on high alert. If she tries to leave, we'll know." Ryan smirked. "Good. Now let's bring them back." Emma McAllister had never felt so free. The warm Caribbean breeze kissed her skin as she sipped a cocktail by the pool. David lay beside her, scrolling through his phone. "Babe, we should look at properties here. Make this a permanent thing." Emma grinned, stretching lazily. "I like the sound of that." But just as she took another sip of her drink, her phone rang. She frowned. No one was supposed to have this number. "Curious," she answered. "Emma McAllister?" a deep voice asked. Her blood ran cold. "This is Detective Ryan Carter with the Orlando PD. We know what you did." Emma's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. She shot up, glancing around as if she expected cops to appear from nowhere. "You murdered your husband," Ryan continued, his voice calm but firm. "And you sold your own daughter." Emma's breath came in short gasps. I don't know what you're talking about. You can lie all you want, but we found Mark's body. We recovered Lily." He let that sink in. "She's safe, and she's talking." Emma's stomach twisted. Lily was talking? David sat up beside her, frowning. "What's wrong?" Emma ignored him, her mind racing. "We've contacted Bahamian authorities," Ryan continued. "You're officially wanted for murder and human trafficking. It's only a matter of time before they find you." Emma gritted her teeth. Number this wasn't supposed to happen. She ended the call and turned to David. "We need to leave." Now David's expression darkened. "Go where?" "You didn't think this through, did you?" Emma stared at him, realization dawning. David had no intention of running. He had already gotten what he wanted, Mark's money. And now, with the cops closing in, Emma was just baggage. Emma barely had time to react before David stood and grabbed his phone. "I gotta go. Wait." She scrambled up, grabbing his wrist. "You can't just leave me." David pulled away, his expression cold. "You're the one they're after, not me." Emma's blood turned to ice. "You're setting me up?" David gave her a cruel smile. "You did this to yourself, babe." And just like that, he walked away, leaving Emma alone, trapped. Emma McAllister stood frozen, watching David disappear into the crowded resort lobby. Her hands trembled as panic set in. He was leaving her. Her mind raced. Think, Emma, think. She had cash, enough to book a private boat off the Share Island. She just needed to move fast. She grabbed her purse and rushed toward the hotel's front desk, trying to act normal. "I need to check out," she told the receptionist, forcing a smile. The woman typed on her computer. "Of course, Ms. McAllister. Will you be needing a taxi to the airport? Emma hesitated. Uh, no, just finalizing my bill. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. Any moment now, police could storm through the doors. Then the receptionist frowned. Oh, Ms. McAllister, could you wait just a moment? There's an issue with your reservation. Emma's stomach twisted. They know. She turned to run, only to come face to face with two Bahamian police officers. Emma McAllister, one of them said. You're under arrest. Emma sat in the cramped back seat of the police transport van, wrists cuffed tightly. Outside, palm trees swayed under the golden sunset, but she barely saw them. Detective Ryan Carter had called her bluff. She never had a chance. As the plane took off, headed back to Florida, Ryan sat across from her, arms crossed. His expression was unreadable. You really thought you'd get away with it, didn't you? He finally said. Emma glared at him. I don't know what you're talking about. Ryan shook his head, chuckling. Your bank records tell a different story. The fake storage unit rental, the cash deposit to Carla Diaz. Your cell phone pinged near the crime scene the night Mark was killed. Should I keep going? Emma clenched her jaw. You have no proof I killed him. Ryan leaned forward. Your own daughter is proof. Lily told us what happened. Emma's stomach dropped. Lily, talked? Ryan nodded. She saw everything. She told us how you and David were whispering late at night, how Daddy was sleeping in the garage for days before you left. She's not stupid, Emma. Emma's breath quickened. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. Ryan narrowed his eyes. So you did plan it? Emma snapped her mouth shut. Too late. Ryan sat back, satisfied. That's all I needed to hear. Back in Orlando, the full extent of Emma's crime unraveled. Forensic evidence confirmed that Mark McAllister had been drugged before being stabbed. The toxicology report showed traces of sedatives in his system, medication that Emma had picked up from a pharmacy just days before his death. Security footage placed David Carter at the hardware store where the plastic wrap was purchased. Phone records linked Emma to Carla Diaz before Lily went missing. And then, the final blow, David was arrested in Miami, trying to board a flight to Mexico. In exchange for a deal, he spilled everything. Emma had planned Mark's murder for weeks. She and David intended to drain his accounts, sell Lily to traffickers, and disappear into paradise. But she had underestimated two things: how fast police would connect the dots, and that David had no loyalty to her. In the courtroom, Emma McAllister sat stiffly as the judge read the charges against her. First-degree murder, conspiracy, child trafficking. She barely reacted, her face pale, her eyes hollow. When the jury returned after only 2 hours of deliberation, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty. Ryan Carter watched from the back of the courtroom. Justice had been served, but even as Emma was led away in handcuffs, he knew there was no real victory here. Mark McAllister was dead. Lily had lost both her parents, and no matter how many criminals he put away, there would always be another Emma McAllister, another person willing to betray their own flesh and blood for greed. Still, as he walked out into the Florida sunshine, he reminded himself why he did this job. Because at least this time, the bad guys didn't win.